Oh boy, another year, another Microsoft exclusive to talk about. So as many of you know, Crackdown 3 came out on Friday last week, the 15th of February. And as much as I'd rather not, let's talk about it. Yeah, the critics are shitting all over this game. And some of it's warranted, some of it's not. And today I wanted to actually talk about why I think that the game is actually a bit better than people are giving it credit for, but obviously it's not what Xbox fans have been wanting. They've been wanting their own God of War. They've been wanting their own Spider-Man. They've been wanting their own Uncharted 4. And this doesn't deliver it. This isn't it. So let's go ahead and try to talk about some of the things that were good and that were bad. That I feel like, honestly, this game is this close to being something somewhat special. It is. It really is. And I'm going to try to make that argument today. So let's start with the good. The good includes the multitude of different weapons and tools for destruction that are in Crackdown 3. Now, I mean, really, this is one that I felt like they really did nail. There's over 25 different weapons. Each of them feel fairly unique. I mean, you have your generic weapons like a handgun and your assault rifle, stuff like that, but you also have some really cool, unique weapons like the single-target gun or a rocket that splits into 3 rockets. Stuff like that where, you know, you have unique weaponry that is fun to use. It's a blast to sit there and blow away enemies, no matter how big or small that they are.
Careful, Agent.
Attention. All logistics units are now accessing the max aggression program. Humans, watch out.
The leveling system is fairly inspired. The more that you do things throughout the game, whether it's driving, or it's shooting, or it's punching people in the face, you have like 5 categories that you try to get orbs into to actually level up. And as you get to certain levels, 1, 2, 3, you actually unlock new abilities within that tree. And to be honest with you, I don't mind this system, and I don't mind the way that they go about it. I actually like it. The problem with it is the fact that I don't feel like it's quite deep enough. With only there being 6 levels, you feel, like you'll wind up getting through it just a bit too quick, and that there's not enough variety in different things. It would have been also nice to have multiple abilities to choose from in each skill tree to go along with the weaponry and, of course, the driving skill. You actually have cars that you can drive, whether you steal people out of them or you use your own special car that you have. The car that you have can actually sit there and transform into different things, whether it's what they call the spider mode, which can actually climb buildings and mountains and stuff, and can actually jump into the air. It also has a tank mode that you can unlock once you get to, I think it's level 5 in that skill, that actually is an unstoppable force, as you just blow and mow down everything. And this is really cool. I like this. It would have been nice to have it, like I said before, a little deeper, a little more fleshed out, but to be honest with you, I liked it. What I didn't like is the fact that the driving is really wonky and it feels like you're on a fucking cloud. What do I mean by that? Well, you just feel so floaty in the cars, like they've got no weight. You can turn on a dime, you can, you'll hit a curb that's like this high and you will do flips, and trying to do challenges with cars is mind-numbing because of this. I tried to get gold in one race and I kept missing it by like a second because of the fact that every time I would go down around a particular curb, or there was a couple particular curbs, but right in a general area, if I tried to slide, I'd hit that curb and it would just send me careening out of control and it was frustrating. It just, I nearly whipped my controller through the TV, and I get mad, but I don't usually get quite that mad, and it's frustrating when you're trying to go ahead and get something 100% done, and you can't because the mechanics are just not there. It's definitely not a Forza moment. It really isn't. It feels like, honestly, it feels like a really bad sketch of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which maybe that's what that was. I'm not entirely sure. The game hosts a variety of enemies, which is great. It's nice to sit there and have different enemies that you get to take out in different ways. After a while, though, it doesn't really matter who's in your way because once you gain so many levels and unlock so many perks and abilities, as well as your ridiculous amount of weaponry, nobody's gonna stand in your way. Nobody. You're gonna mow down through them, and I mean that's kind of the point. So I mean I can't really dock it for that. It's supposed to give you a superhero feeling and a superhero vibe. Yeah, I mean at first, I would even say in the middle, even on normal, it can get kind of hard at times depending on where you wander into. But for the most part, once you go ahead and level up so far, you're gonna wind up destroying everything in front of you like a fucking god. And with all those different enemies actually brings about the different bosses. Now this was also really cool. Believe it or not, I mean the boss fights were wonderful in this game. It was something that was actually really done right other than the weapons. The fact that you go ahead and you have bigger than life enemies who you can hear audio logs on, and you can sit there and hear different information on, and you actually get to learn more about them. You'll actually try to do it in a Shadow of Mordor sort of way where you're attacking their little bases and their little groups and their little hubs to draw out the captains, the lieutenants, and of course the big boss herself. This is wonderful, and I felt like it was done fairly well.
I get paid to inflict pain, but I'd hurt you just to hear you scream.
The biggest issue, of course, is the fact that the bosses were a bit weak when it came to writing, and I'm not sure why. I mean, it felt like they put a lot of effort into each and every boss from a design standpoint and somewhat to the backstory. But to be real with you, I couldn't tell you any of their names. I couldn't tell you who they were. It was just a generic villain, in a way. I mean, with the writing it was. You know, you'd see them and you'd recognize them and you just talk about how they looked or what they did. You couldn't tell somebody like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. You don't know who they are. And that was a bit of a disappointment because, like I said, you were 2/3 of the way there. You just needed to give them a bit more of an opportunity to really get fleshed out, and then it would feel interesting to sit there and take them out. Another missed opportunity, of course, with that is the fact that Terry Crews doesn't quit with these bad guys. I mean, you have Terry fucking Crews, and in the beginning of the game, he has an amazing monologue. He gets you amped up.
New York, Moscow, Seoul, a whole new group of cities just got hit. It's chaos, and the intel we've got is shaky at best. These are dark days, Commander.
Don't worry, sir. We're here to light shit up. Skills!
Skills for kills!
That never gets old. Listen up! Our target is New Providence. Now, she may look pretty, but this city is full of corporate gangsters, psychopaths, and butchers. We are diving head first into a viper's nest. But I promise you this, come tomorrow, we're all gonna be walking around wearing shiny snake skin boots. These sons of bitches wanna black out the world? Not on our watch. We are the goddamn agency. And the agency needs justice.
By any means necessary!
Okay. Someone give me my jam! This is it, agents! Time to make Daddy Duck cry!
Right? But after that, he's mute. Except every once in a while, he will tell you to fuck gravity. And that is hilarious. But why am I only getting like small little one-liners here and there? You could have had him quipping with the bosses. They're talking shit to you. It would have been amazing for Terry to flex his muscles and talk shit to everybody. And to add on to that, there were no Brooklyn Nine-Nine references. How can I not have any Sergeant Jeffords? You could have had just an accidental line in there and had it to where he referred to himself as Sergeant Jeffords. I would have laughed my ass off. I'm sure a lot of people would laugh their ass off. And maybe it was in there and we all missed it, but honestly, I don't remember ever seeing or hearing a single Brooklyn Nine-Nine reference, and it makes me sad that that was actually the case. You had an opportunity, and I felt like you really let it squander. Terry Crews is wonderful in this, and I love playing as Terry Crews. The dude looks badass. I love slamming the ground as Terry Crews. The problem is I just didn't feel like we got actually enough Terry Crews. It's not enough to just look like him. You should have had him be able to talk and really just give him a mic and tell him to just come up with his own catchphrases and just sit there and just chat and talk. The dude is awesome. If you don't follow him on Twitter, follow him on Twitter. The dude is awesome. Okay? And I just felt like he deserved just a little bit better treatment in here. Because really, while yes, he's one of the positives, he's also kind of one of the things that holds the game back, and it's not because of him. Audio is good. I mean, most of the weapons sound fairly beefy. You know, you're going to hear, you know, different things like helicopters flying overboard and, you know, the different cars and the different, you know, the different people calling out. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff that is pretty well done, to be honest with you. Biggest issue, once again, going into this, the fact that some characters didn't have enough lines, and instead of having Terry Crews talk and say anything other than fuck gravity, you had Commander of the agents talking, and he repeat lines over and over and over again to the point where I wanted to reach the screen and choke his fucking ass. As well as your new ally, who also does a really good job of just repeating herself over and over and over again, and it's just, maybe it was a time crunch, maybe it just wasn't in the budget to bring them in and have them say more lines, but my god, it was desperately needed. If you weren't going to have Terry Crews talk, and you're going to have me listen to these two idiots, then you at least have to make them likable, and not have them repeating the same 4 lines over and over again to the point where I want to punch my screen. The world is colorful, cartoony, and some people have actually put this as a negative, but to me, I actually consider this somewhat of a positive. The world doesn't have to be over-realistic. The cartoony style, I think, does well here. It's a Borderlands style type of art and direction, and I don't mind it. It was actually funny because Emily was sitting next to me as I was playing it, and she even asked, she goes, "Are the same people who did Gearbox make this?" And she didn't mean it as an insult, she recognized the cell shading kind of style that the game has, and to be honest with you, it doesn't bother me as much. I don't think it looks like shit like most people will sit there and say. It's bright, it's colorful, and it's vibrant, and I actually rather enjoy it, whether it's a day or night, you know, and you have that day and night cycle, which is nice, but that's once again another missed opportunity. Playing games like Metro Exodus, from this last weekend, which by the way, I cannot wait to talk about that. There are different reasons for you to play at night or to play during the day. During the day, you might have to take on more human enemies, and while there might be more of them and they're going to shoot at you, they're much easier to take down than the mutants that actually populate the world. But at night, you can sneak around, and if you're smart and you're good, you can save your bullets and conserve everything. But once again, you're going to have much tougher enemies that if you do rile up, you're going to have hell to pay for it. And probably wind up using more bullets as these giant bullet sponge lumbering enemies are going to come after you, and they're not going to play nice. Some of them are fast, and a lot of them are vicious. And it makes you think, like, how do I want to go about this objective? Do I want to sleep it off and wait till the nighttime, or hey, it's getting dark, maybe I want to continue it during the day? And it makes it where you've got this kind of like choice/consequence back and forth that this game could have used. You know, make it where during the day there are far more, you know, the tyrant government enemies, and maybe during the day there's more thugs, you know. And I mean, that's another thing that kind of it gets punished for a little bit too, is the fact that where Arkham Knight really screwed up, because instead of leaving the civilians in and making it where you're trying to protect the civilians and trying to do more for the civilians and stuff like that, it made them just go away. And the biggest issue why that was a problem was because it just felt like Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, but you could just drive around in the Batmobile, you know, whoop-de-fucking-do. They left the people in here, but there's no consequences for killing them. There's nobody that's, like, mean-mugging them or being tyrannical against them. So there's not as much, like, opportunity to be, like, a cop and to be an agent and to really instill, you know, this feeling of freedom and wanting to push back against the people oppressing. Other than rescuing some people in another generic jail cell that's, for whatever reason, in the middle of the street or the middle, you know, right next door to, you know, the taco house or whatever the case is. Like, there's, for some reason, it's just these guys are leaving them in the wide open and they're guarded by like 5 dudes. It's like, which then of course leads us into the story, which, like, come on. I guess with the original Crackdown, it showed us what could be a fairly decent story. Alright, I didn't really ever play the first Crackdown, but you talk to most people who have, and they talk very, very open and happy about that game. This game, the story's alright, but it's kind of forgettable. There are things about it that were good and I felt like were fleshed out, but like they didn't have enough time to let it simmer. They didn't have enough time to let it really cook and to be something that we wanted to dig our teeth into, and that's the problem. It goes back to the bosses being generic and you don't remember their names. Like I said, the boss battles themselves are great. It's the fact that you have no investment in who you're fighting. The reason why Shadow Mordor works so well is because there's this back and forth with the generals, the lieutenants, and the captains. They use that same kind of system, which I do like, and I think if they do a Crackdown 4, they should keep with that system. It works, okay? However, with Shadow of Mordor, there are back and forths. Whether you kill certain allies, you kill certain enemies of theirs, they'll remember it. If you defeat them in battle and they do come back, they'll remember you. They'll be scarred, they'll remember you, and it felt, you know, not only unique, but it felt like something was playing out in front of you, depending on your choices and your consequences. With this, there isn't quite that. There is none of that here. And while you can say, okay, well, it doesn't need that because of its superhero style type of gameplay, even with Spider-Man told a really good story without all the other stuff that I mentioned, which I feel like would really set this game apart, which really comes to the biggest issue with this game. It's generic. And that's the problem, is like there are some really great selling points to this game, but instead of emphasizing and building on those things, they don't. Instead, they go ahead and they decide to just give you busy work. And busy work isn't enough. It's not good enough anymore. Far Cry gives us busy work, and people, for some reason, still enjoy that game. There are too many open world games, and there are too many semi-open world games that understand what it is to give missions that mean something, as well as telling stories that mean something. Once again, and not to sit there and make this a Metro Exodus review, but so far I can tell you right now, what Metro Exodus does so well with its semi-open world, you know, venues, is the fact that it focuses on having certain points and certain story bits be told through characters that you walk up and just like listen to them talk, right? So it feels organic. And you could easily miss some of these things, or you could actually hear them and never go get them if you don't want to. You just want to focus on the main story bits, and it's going to affect your story because of this choice and consequence kind of gameplay, right? And it's wonderful. It's great because it makes you think, do I want to go there? How many bolts do I have? Do I have enough health packs? Do I have enough materials to make my things, right? There's none of that. You don't think about any of that. All you think about is just mindless destruction, which, like I said, will be fine, but then that comes to the other point of the fact that with it being generic, Crackdown 3 doesn't have a legitimate identity, and that's the problem. Like, you know what it's supposed to be, but it doesn't have that. There's not the complete overworld destruction, which I've seen people comment saying, well, they never said they'd do that. It was only going to be the multiplayer. Fine. While there are some things that are destructible, and after you destroy them, they stay destroyed, like certain buildings will stay on fire after you've completed certain main story missions, it would have been nice to have more of the environment and more of the world be destructible, and then have that fucking choice and consequence between, hey, do I blow this up and take out a bunch of goons so that way they won't bother me anymore, but the citizens see me as more of a threat than the goons, or do I leave it alone and try to protect the citizens and make it where I'm a little more stretched out trying to sit there and protect the citizens, but they view me much more personally and they actually like me a bit more. It's just little things like that, just things that are just off by just a little bit. And it's one of those things where I get it's not easy to sit there and to code or program or do any of that shit. I get it. I understand. And this game was in development hell for the most part. And I think that's the biggest thing that people have to recognize and remember when it comes to this game, that, while I've pointed out a lot of these negatives and things that I'd actually like to see get better, I would like to see a Crackdown 4, and I would like to see Terry come back. Believe it or not, I love Terry. I'd want him to come back as my main protagonist and bring back some of the characters from this game. I felt like they did more than enough good job, and I would like to see them fleshed out. I don't want them to see them be completely rewritten or completely wrote out. I want to see them filled in. I want more depth. And I feel like really that's what this game is missing. It's like the pizza being put together. The crust is kneaded to perfection, and it's all spread out. It's ready to go. They've got that sauce on there, but they forgot to put the fucking cheese on, and so now you just got a sauce pizza. Everything's perfect. The sauce is seasoned to perfection. The dough is kneaded to perfection. There just ain't no fucking cheese on there, and that's the problem. One more real kind of example of what I'm trying to actually point out too is there's no real rewards for some of these things, these busy work things that you do. So for instance, there's one collectible where you get to get the DNA, and you get DNA from fallen agents that at the beginning of the game, you get attacked and a lot of agents wind up dying, get wiped out entirely. Instead of making it where you've got a legitimate purpose for picking off these agents. So let's say each agent has a special ability. You have your 5 trees, but there's a 6th tree that's special, unique to each and every agent. I think that would have given more purpose and more identity to wanting to go collect every single body's DNA, so that way you go, hey, I want to go play with this person because he's got an ability that lets him carry twice as many grenades, or he's got an ability that makes it where he can take more damage, or he's got an ability that, when he slams on the ground, it does 3 times the damage, whatever, just, you could have made it unique to where each and every person that you try to go and find has an ability that makes you go, oh wait, I really want to go play with that person. And that's what this game is missing. It's missing more weapons and abilities and gear to unlock and have purpose about going and getting. Like I said, you've got points all over the map for you to go ahead and take certain things down and take certain things out to draw out the bosses, but it doesn't do enough good job using those things to help really fill in the backstory of said bosses much. It does a little bit, but it's not enough for you to be like, oh yeah, that person stands out in my mind. And that's the problem. You gotta sit there and take out another thing to sit there and point out too. You've got these missile defense programs that you're tasked with trying to take down. After taking them down, how cool would it have been if you could have gotten a jet? I mean, I know that's more physics, more programming, and more, code that you have to write for that. And I get that's hard, but just for a second, if you could have made it where it was very rewarding, hey, I could have a jet and I can blow entire buildings down. It would have given it more of an identity, would have carved it more out, and would have given you more purpose to do the busy work. Some people don't do busy work, they just have handwritten, really well fleshed out side quests. And some people do have busy work, but they do it so that way they put really great rewards behind it, so it doesn't just feel like busy work. Like Spider-Man did a really good job of that. There was a few things I would have liked to see done a little bit better, and I talked about that in my review. But for the most part, even though they have some busy work with some of their missions and side quests and stuff like that they have in their side activities, the rewards of getting different suits, different abilities, different things is enough that you put it out of your mind. You don't think about it being busy work. And so it's not boring, it's just fun. And where Crackdown 3 is fun, it lacks that. And because it doesn't have an identity, it's just another open world third-person shooter game. That's all that it is. And that's sad because it deserves more. And Terry Crews deserves more. Like I said before, the dude's great. And like I said, while the game's fun, it's this close. It's this close to being something actually good. It's not great. It's just missing 1 or 2 things, 1 or 2 ingredients to make it the full thing. Which brings me to my final verdict. And for the first game in February, I'm going to wind up giving Crackdown 3 a 6 out of 10. And it saddens me because really I think it might even be closer to a 7 out of 10. But, just for the fun factor and some of the things that you can do. However, I feel like a 6 out of 10 is fair. It's still slightly above average. Most people won't see it like that, but it's still slightly above average with the great guns, the fact that You know, you've got your bright and colorful, vibrant world. You've got really great boss fights. You have a multitude of different enemies to fight against. However, it struggles with the fact that the story is just subpar at best. And it struggles with the fact that it doesn't utilize its best asset, Terry fucking Crews. And the fact that there's just not enough things to go and achieve and get, I think really hurts the game too. And as well, the very last point, it doesn't have an identity. The identity really should have been behind destruction, and instead, the destruction is mainly left to the multiplayer mode, which, I don't know, it's just another generic multiplayer mode with destruction. I'll go play Battlefield if I want mass destruction, and that's what's killing it, and it's sad. So anyways, so that'll be it for me, guys. Hopefully I'll be able to get this review up fairly quickly. I'll be doing some editing here very soon, and then followed by that will be Far Cry New Dawn, and of course, hopefully by the weekend, Metro Exodus. I have a ton to say about that. Until then, I will see you guys on the next On The Shelf. Bye, guys.